banks also. In the industry, those processes are present, barring few of them. Few, in a sense, who are very limited, and which wherein other banks are not doing that business. So there could be some of the process, but major process which financial institution has, like KYC, settlement, corporate action, and then you can talk about confirmation and fund accounting. So these are the common processes which most of the financial institutions have. And if there is some uh, valuation is something which not every valuation stuff is something which not every financial institution has in India. Though when we talk about the valuation is something, or that is the foundation or the backbone of investment banking, because that is how they actually make the mark to market and trades appear in the system. So that is primarily done by the quant team along with the traders and all. So that is something which not every bank has, right? So these profile, if you actually get into these profiles, they are good profiles. They're not bad profile at all. But these profiles are not available with every bank. So there could be a challenge. But when you look at profiles like KYC, corporate action, settlement, fund accounting, these are a very good profile, which are largely available with other banks on financial institution as well. So I again congratulate all of you for uh, for able to capitalize this job opportunity and able to get through this opportunity. I guess Jeff is also available now. Jeff and Neha are also there, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So Jeff, again, congratulations, many congratulations again. And
Thank you, sir.
okay, have you got any idea what your process is all about? Any clue as of now?
Yes, sir. It is the market data management analyst. Uh,
Okay,
so so in that it is like the prices keep updating regularly. So I have to update that and keep a check on that kind of thing. The prices of stocks and mutual funds and stuff.
okay. So this is also a good thing, because if you talk about the reference data that we studied, right? So market data is a part of reference data only. So in a sense, market data is also largely available with other financial institutions as well. So we were actually talking about which all profile are available with other financial institutions and the industry at large. So the processes which you have been into or have been selected now, so the corporate action, KYC, market data, settlement, fund accounting, right? So these are the processes which are um, quite quite popular with other financial institutions. So these processes do have a presence with other financial institutions as well. So in a sense, you have you can really be happy and feel happy about the fact like this opportunity is just not limited to Saxo Bank. These opportunities can there could be opportunity pertaining to the same profile outside the world also. So overall, it would be good, because in the long run, maybe you want to thinking of moving out of Saxo Bank and joining some other bank. So that way, it really boosts your confidence. It gives you some direction also. Like, it is not just limited to one particular company only. And at times, people are stuck when they are just confused, and when they know this fact that the process which they are working into is just limited to one is just limited in the industry. That means it doesn't have very wide presence in the industry, and there are not many other financial institutions or banks who actually have that process. So that it becomes an issue. But if I look at your profiles, most of the profile which I have which I have known so far are available in the industry, and they have very good business. So that way it is really good. And again, I wish you a very good good luck. And Akriti has already started doing her on the job training, or on the job role has begun for her. So she was telling about her experience, like what she is doing. She is into the KYC profile, so she screens the documents and the paperwork which we receives from the sales team based out of Singapore, and that is what look at by her, as in she would be having some parameters and criteria or checklist by which those documentation would need to be checked through, and again it can be approved, it can be rejected. This is the information or documentation available with the KYC associate. So KYC is also one of the good processes. So I'm happy for all of you, and it is a very good feeling for me also, given uh, half of the class of the, or rather more than half of the class is already placed by now, and the bank and the institution with which you are placed is a good institution. It's a reputed institution. It has some presence in the front office roles also, though I don't know how much exposure or how much exposure you guys would be having to those profiles, because the front office roles would be quite limited at Saxo Bank, given the front office thing is already quite limited with other financial institutions also. But Saxo Bank is one of the bank which has got some exposure uh, to your this front office thing. Okay, 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 guys. So how is it going now? So what are your thoughts? How are you feeling after getting through this opportunity? Anything that comes to your mind? Maybe any more question that you have, like how the profile would look like when you join, or any thought that is coming to your mind, any thought that you are maybe having at this moment, and how you actually perceive this opportunity, maybe before we actually begin with the session. Anyone?
Hello, hello.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
फॉर मी इट इज़ वेरी गुड, अच्छी अपॉर्चुनिटी मिली है कॉर्पोरेट एक्शन में। और मेरे को कल मेल भी आया था एक, सो उसमें ये था कि मंडे से वो शुरू होगा हमारा जो भी ऑफिस का काम है। तो बिफोर दैट यू लुक एट द फॉलोइंग इवेंट्स
Mm-hmm.
जो भी अभी होने वाले हैं। तो उसमें हमने जितने इवेंट्स पढ़े थे उससे बहुत ही ज्यादा इवेंट्स, तो मतलब बहुत सारे इवेंट्स हैं जो हमने पढ़े भी नहीं है, वो भी बहुत सारे हैं उसमें।
Okay, okay,
तो
which is quite
मतलब
good.
26 टाइप ऑफ इवेंट्स है, वो सारे मैंने चेक किए थे, अभी उनको सब पढ़ना है। तो ऑल इन
Mm-hmm.
ऑल ठीक ही है अभी। और अभी एक सिस्को से भी उन्होंने कुछ एक वर्चुअल प्राइवेट नेटवर्क के थ्रू मेरे को एक लिंक भेजा था ताकि
Okay.
उसको आप इंस्टॉल करो, पर अभी शायद वो हो नहीं रहा है। उसमें एक प्रॉब्लम आ रही है कि विंडोज 10 में वो इंस्टॉल होगा और मेरे में विंडोज 7 है।
Oh, okay,
तो
okay,
अब इसके रिगार्डिंग उन्होंने कहा कि एक मेल मेरे को भेज दो, मैं आईटी वाले से बात करके फिर आपको मंडे इसका सोल्यूशन निकालते हैं फिर हम।
okay. अच्छा वो installation के लिए, because Windows maybe that Cisco thing would not be compatible with Windows 7, so Windows 10 would be compatible to Cisco system or whatever they are using as a receiver for having work from home from the laptop, right?
बस वही है, बाकी तो अपॉर्चुनिटी बहुत अच्छी है। और बाकी लेट्स सी अब क्या होता है। कंपनी तो अच्छी मिली है, बस अब लॉकडाउन हट जाए तो अच्छी बात है, सब लोग ऑफिस में जाए।
हाँ, that is true. क्योंकि कभी कभी क्या होता है कि in the beginning phase, usually what I have observed or what I have noticed, people usually get frustrated from work from home thing, given it involves your training and everything, and at times the training, if it is not smooth, then you will not be able to do good at your role, in your role rather. So that becomes a challenge in the beginning, but my fingers crossed for you guys, it should go well, and thereby you would be able to perform well in your roles when you are fully trained, and when you have a thorough understanding about the operation. Though as in the fundamentals that we have learned in the curriculum is from the point of view of getting you create an interest about the processes and operations that we have. And as you rightly said, corporate action is just not limited to the ones that we have done. There are a lot of corporate actions that we actually, if we just talk about them, then the list really goes on and on. So that way, it is a lot of things you would be learning when you actually go get into your role, and then you will realize the world is really very big. So the curriculum in itself is very big, and it's very tiring at times when you start looking the things, and when you just go through the things which are there in the curriculum, and at one go it becomes quite difficult. But if you just go by one, then probably it is not that difficult. You can actually be very confident about what you have done through the entire curriculum. That it is easy to comprehend, easy to deliver when it comes to the opportunities and the roles you will be getting into, and you will definitely be able to relate. So it is really good. Okay, so let's now come to the topic that we are doing, that is about KYC. Let me just open it.
सर मुझे लग रहा है जैब के लिए बहुत अच्छा एक उसको एक डिपार्टमेंट मिल गया है, क्योंकि वो वैसे ही स्टॉक्स में इन्वेस्ट करता है, और अब मार्केट डेटा एनालिसिस में जाकर के उसको और अच्छा क्लियर वो हो पाएगा कि वो अच्छी तरह मार्केट को समझ भी पाएगा और इन्वेस्ट भी कर पाएगा उसके अकॉर्डिंग.
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल, ये तो है. Because if you talk about the market data, it is also one of the very good profile, and the market data is all about the rates, haircut, prices, right? And it is one of the process which is widely available with other financial institutions also, because it comes under the domain of reference data. So it is a good process, and he already has a knack of trading and everything. So it will definitely be playing in his favor, and he would be able to leverage this opportunity.
Yeah. Sir, actually, I was looking to go for valuation eventually. Matlab, like after this, I was looking to do MBA in finance from UK most probably. So I would go for valuation eventually. That is like,
yeah, yeah. So yeah, then it is a stepping stone for you, because I can definitely tell you, maybe in the beginning it becomes a bit difficult to get into valuation directly, because valuation profiles are a bit of a riskier profile, because the whole thing depends on valuation. If the valuation goes
yeah,
wrong, then your trading may also go wrong, because traders, the people who are on the trading, they completely rely on the quants team, the valuation which has been done by them, right?
yeah,
So that way it is a bit critical profile, but that is the reason I'm saying it is a good role that you're getting into. Once you gain enough knowledge about the market data, and you have a good exposure to the other profiles also, because you just not be limited to only market data. All
yeah,
of you would definitely be having a lot of training programs also, cross training programs also, mostly at a bank like Saxo, other also like Citi and RPS, Bank of America, all these big institutions do have a cross programming, cross training, and cross knowledge sharing sessions also. So that way you can definitely be able to enhance your knowledge. You will be able to hone your other skills also, which you think you should be having more exposure to, and ultimately land into the valuation space which you are aiming maybe at this point in time. So I will say you just need to be a bit patient with you, and I'm sure that you can, because given you have an interest at this early stage, you can definitely get into this profile. It's not a big deal. It is just you need to just take a baby steps and keep learning things, and keep enhancing your skills, that is the technical skills as well as your networking skills, because all these things really work, because at the industry level, when you have a good connections, when you have a good technical knowledge also, then everything as a whole work in your favor, and you can definitely land into the profile which you desire for yourselves. That's not a big deal. You can definitely be able to do all that stuff that you have. So are you planning to move out of India, or how you're thinking, or are you still thinking of just being in India and continue
No, sir,
while
actually, I
studying?
was applying, before this corona was happening. So I almost applied to UK universities. I was planning to go this September or February, but then this corona happened, and now I'm backing off for a while because, I don't know how the job market gonna be after a while, or how this
Hmm.
gonna end and what the conditions will be. So I'm just keeping a low for now. But if it didn't happen, then most probably I would have been gone by this September or February.
Okay, okay, yeah, I understand the point, because now things are quite glooming across the globe. So things are very, very glooming across the globe. So if you take a move of moving out at this year, probably that would not be making huge advantage to you, because things are tough across the globe.
Yeah.
So even if you do a good course, think we are not sure how good the opportunities would be post your education policy. So maybe in a wait of a year, 1 year or so, would be good at this crucial stage. It is a crucial for everyone. So in India also it is
Yeah.
crucial, and other countries it is far difficult than what is in India, because they are more impacted by compared to, if you compare with India. Then that way, I will suggest you should continue with the job maybe for a year and a half or two, and then you can think of moving out, and that will really be giving you a better prospect in terms of your career and overall goals that you have put in for yourself.
Yeah, so actually, if I would have gone now, so I would have gone for masters in finance because you need
Hmm.
at least 2 or 3 years experience to do MBA. But if I go after 2 years, then I would definitely go for MBA in finance.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Because you have a 2 years experience, then you can capitalize the MBA program rather than going for the
Yeah,
master's one. So that would
yeah.
be better thing to do. Yeah, absolutely. That's right. Great. Okay, so with this, let me just open the KYC one that we were doing. 1 second. Okay, so we had completed, I guess, up till slide 40 something. So let me just move on to the slide where we left it. I guess we had left it here, right, at 42, slide number 42. So this we had completed, and now we can move on to slide number 43. So assessing the risk of money laundering. Okay, so as we discussed in the previous slides, so when you are onboarding a customer, you need to assess the risk of the customer, and when you are assessing the risk, you are assessing basis the parameters given to you. So you would look at customer, you would look at the geography in which the customer is dealing with you. You would look at the product and services which customer is actually using with you. So these are three basic parameter basis that you identify the risk which customer poses to the bank, or which customer has for the bank. So there is a customer who would not be a very risky customer if he is supplying all the documentation to you, if he is giving all the KYC documentation and able to share all the information. Similarly, if a customer is a salaried customer, so you know where the source of funds are coming from. So this kind of a customer are considered to be the customer with a low profile who do not have a higher risk to the financial institution. Similarly, if there is a customer who is doing a business, right, and the business is not a very huge business, but a medium business wherein the revenue or turnover is a certain up to a certain threshold, so that would go into the medium risk customer category. So that is how you actually uh, you categorize the risk for the customer you're dealing with. So high, low, medium, and high risk customer. Geography is basically where the customer which customers or which country you are dealing into. If there is a country which is a riskier zone, where the crime rate is higher, the money laundering instances are more, where terrorism activities are more, then probably the geography becomes a riskier geography. So more due diligence, more KYC checks are required for such countries. If there are no such crime rate, no such incidents of various different kinds of crime, then probably that geography can be considered to be safer one, and the level of KYC and the risk assessment that is done for the customers wouldn't be that big compared to the countries where those things. Yeah. Yeah. Any question? All all right. So this is how we categorize the risk assessment of the customer for the customers who are being onboarded in the beginning, and then the product and services which are being consumed by the customer. So as we discussed the other day in the previous slides, also when you are offering various products and services to the customer, so you need to be very mindful of those services being offered to the customer. So there could be a possibility wherein the risk of default or a risk of being misusing those those products can be there. So that could be it can be the product that is being offered, maybe the home loan, it can be the product savings account, checking account which are offered to the customers, and if the accounts are being used legitimately or illegitimately, something which needs a regular check. So regular check is needed on all those services which are being used by the customers, so that it is assessed that there is no risk, inherent risk with the customer who is transacting with you. So these are the parameters basis that you assess whether the customer is a riskier one or it is uh, it is a low risk, medium risk, high risk. Okay, so let's move on to slide 44. Okay, so this is an activity you can probably look at these factors and maybe give your rating if it is a potential risk, and then if it is a potential risk, then you need to rate it high, medium, and low. What kind of a risk is that? So you may take your time, maybe 5 minutes, and go through these factors and then give you potential risk to them. If it is yes, no, and what kind of a risk is this? If it is a low risk, if it is a medium risk, high risk. Okay, so just look at these factors and then give your risk yes, no, and then we will discuss like how why do you think those are yes and why do you think those are no, and why the risk is high, medium, and low accordingly. So maybe you can take 5 minutes of time and just think over the factors given here. Is it done? Are we still doing it? Arifa? You done? You need more time. 2 more minutes? Anyone who's done? Okay, so let us start. A large and growing customer base in a wide and diverse geographic area. Is it a potential risk? Yes or no?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Everyone, yes?
And
Yes, sir.
Okay. And is it? It will go into high, medium, and low. What do you think?
low.
Okay. 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 Anyone else? Anyone has maybe different view? Okay. Let's move on to the next one. No electronic banking or website informational, non-transactional. Is it yes? No. Potential risk.
Yes,
Mm,
sir.
No.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yes, sir.
Arifa, yes. Okay. Ajay, what do you think? It will be yes. No.
No.
Okay, right. Okay, so anyone who has marked it as yes would like to give rationale. Why do you think it is a risk? And maybe Neha first, you. Why do you think this is a risk to the bank or to the customer for that matter also? Any thought that comes to your mind? It is not necessarily it should be correct or incorrect. It is just about the thought which is coming to your mind. Jeff, would you like to give your rationale? Why do you think it is no? Why it is not yes?
So actually, if we are looking from the point of view of bank, and the risk is when a customer or someone client doesn't pay it back, or somehow in any manner that is like riskier. But if the bank doesn't have electronic transaction, it does not affect the bank to have any risk. There is no point of defaulting or something if the bank doesn't have a website. So from point of view,
Right,
there is no risk in that.
right. That's a good, very rightly said. It's a good point. There is no risk as such, but yeah, you can say there is an inconvenience to the customer. Maybe there are some sophisticated customers who want to use uh, online banking and other thing for their convenience. The convenience thing is hampered there, but there is no risk to the bank, right? If you look at the risk, there is no such as such risk. In fact, the risk is mitigated. Given the cyber attack and everything, there is more risk in online banking. We cannot look at this thing lightly. Online banking is also threat in a sense. because there are customers who are not that tech savvy and who don't able to use online banking. At times the online banking is enabled for them, and they are not the one who are actually using that in online banking. Some other relative or family member in the family is using that online banking, and sometime later it comes to light that the online banking has been compromised or misused by some other person. So that is in a sense a risk when the online banking is activated. So here we are saying the online banking is not available, no electronic banking is available. So that way the risk is not there, but you can say there is the inconvenience to the customer, because you cannot generalize that all the customers don't have knowledge of online banking, and therefore all those things you can have in mind. That way you can justify like that way the inconvenience is definitely there, but in terms of risk we can say there is no risk. So if it goes no, then the other three statements as it is stands null and void. Yes, medium and low doesn't come into picture at all, right? Okay. So the next one, bank offers limited domestic private banking services or trust management products. Or, and guys, trust me, it is not about wrong and right. It is just about using a normal. It is just about thinking how you're looking at things. So you can have your opinion, which can be different also, but you should have a rational. If the rational is valid, then there's a possibility something which you're not, which we consider is not riskier, that may be riskier from your point of view. But in that way, you should be able to justify the rational why you thinking it is yes, why you thinking no, right? So there is no hard and core. These are the answers. We are actually looking at these things and then assessing them in the normal environment and then giving yes and no. So you can have a valid reason for yes. You can have a valid reason for no. So it is just about how you looking at these informations and how you are processing it with the database or the knowledge that you have. So it is all about the same thing. Okay, moving on to the next one. The bank offers limited domestic private banking services or trust management products or services over which the bank has investment discretion. How would you rate? How would you say it is a potential risk or no? Anyone?
So I guess there should be low risk, I guess, but as the bank has discretion on the investment, so it will be
Yeah,
risk.
yeah.
I think it will be a low potential risk because the bank is on the restricting the banking services, trust and asset
Right,
management product, and
right,
वो भी उनके इन्वेस्टमेंट डिस्क्रिप्शन के ऊपर, तो आई थिंक इसमें लो ही रहेगा और लो ही होना ही चाहिए.
right. So the risk will be there. We can't say risk is not there, because when you come up with a product, there is an inherent risk attached to it, but it would be categorized low, or at max it may go into medium category. But it shouldn't be high. High is something which is the topmost risk, right? And there should be a bigger reason of why you categorizing something a high risk. So every bank has got these products, and the bank does trading for themselves also, and also offer the same of services to their clients also. So the proprietary desk can have their vested interest and can do some kind of misuse of the client position for them also. That is inherent. The risk is there, but I can categorize this is a risk which every bank has. It is not something which is unique or which is in any way uh, is anyway separating one financial institution from the other. So all the financial institutions have that risk, and that may at max be a medium kind, or can also be a low, depending on the kind of technology you are having to manage that risk. Right. So with this, I move on to the next one: high turnover, especially in key personal positions. Yeah. How do you look at this thing?
Yes, sir. High risk.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Anyone else?
So that will be the high risk. I would go with that.
Right, absolutely. Because it is, if you look at the statement, it clearly states key personal positions. Hmm? So there are specific positions or specific things where the high turnover is coming up. So that may be the things which are there are legitimate. The high turnover which is appearing is legitimate, but the risk is high, given it is into a particular given space or in a specific space where this thing is popping up or coming up. So that way it would be termed as high thing. You will say it is a high. If you look at the statement, it clearly states that way. A limited number of fund transfer from customer, non-customer, limited third-party transactions, and no foreign funds transfer. How do you rate this?
I guess no risk or
Yes, it is
low risk.
No, I think no
right.
low,
It
no
is
low.
right. Absolutely, it is a no risk, as you said, because you can see clearly the account has got some transactions. It is not very huge transactions. Very few transactions are happening. Few transfer, limited number of transfers are happening. So there is no risk. It's very consistent. You can say it's very consistent with the activity being done by the customer. So there is nothing which is unpredictable, which is out of line. So that way there is no risk. You can say uh, it is business as usual for the bank. There is nothing which a bank should be putting more effort or more energy to investigate it to know why the things are going this way. So it is as usual. The number of transactions are limited, which are so that way it is no risk. We can say large number of international accounts with unexplained currency activity. The last one,
So that will be high.
right,
High risk.
Yes, sir.
right.
High risk.
Right, everyone, right, absolutely. So this is very clear. Like you can definitely look at the statement and make out by looking at the statement. It's very clearly stated. Large number of international accounts with unexplained when comes. That means it is a very high risk, right? There should be some rational. So there is no rational, unexplained currency activity. So it is a high risk, goes without saying. Okay, okay. So let us move on. Slide next. Okay, so AML compliance, risk-based approach, countering risk at the national level. Financial institutions and regulators should have access to reliable and actionable information about threats. Must be must be emphasis on cooperative arrangement among policymakers, law enforcement, regulators, and the private sector. Authorities should publicly recognize the risk-based approach will not eradicate all elements of risk. Authorities have a responsibility to establish an environment in which financial institutions need not be afraid of regulatory sanctions, where they have acted responsibly and implemented adequate internal systems and controls. Supervisory staff should be well trained in risk-based approach, thus as applied by supervisors in the financial institution. So what this actually is talking about, when you are assessing risk at the national level, you should be having a balanced approach. You cannot make your law so tight, wherein the banking officials they are afraid of doing their business in the jurisdiction. It should not become so difficult for them to operate from any country. So that there should be a balanced approach by the regulators when they are monitoring the financial institution. At the same time, they should not be very lenient approach toward the activities done by the financial institution. So it should be there should be proper balance between the regulators and the lawmakers and the financial institution, so that it is easy for all of them, and they can have confidence in the system. The system can have a confidence in the financial institution as well. That is how this thing is written here. When you look at the compliance from the risk-based approach, so the compliance is something which is the officials of the bank should be compliant to the laws laid down by the country. They should be very well versed with all the rules and regulations laid down by the constitution or the or the jurisdictions of that particular region where the bank or the financial institution is being operated. At the same time, the system should be robust so that all the loopholes and the risks can be factored in and they can be prevented in the beginning also, rather than getting them detected at the later stage and then becomes a big thing. So it's a nothing. It's very self-explanatory. If you look at the statements, very self-explanatory. Nothing to further go into and explain them. I can just move on with the next slide. If you have any further question, maybe we can take it. Otherwise, I can move on. Okay. Okay, so if we again look at the same thing that we talked about here, we can look at this thing in two ways: from the financial institution point of view and from the public authorities point of view, right? So these things are a bit presented in the form of tabular form, and so when the public authorities, when they assess risk, how do they assess? They look at from the point of national risk assessment, like how the situation or thing which is being done by the customer can be, if that is risky at the national level. The legal regulatory framework that support the application of risk-based approach. So the risk-based approach which is taken by the financial institution, if that actually fits into the framework, the legal framework or not. So when I say the legal framework, that means the system which is being used by the financial institution, if that can be challenged in the legal system or in the regulatory framework somewhere. So if something goes wrong due to things not followed and compliant in the beginning by the financial institution knowingly, or when I say knowingly, that means there is a gross mistake by the financial institution that can very clear itself. So if that thing can be challenged in the legal system or in the regulatory framework, that can be actually taken as a gross mistake, and accordingly a right sort of actions can be taken against the financial institution. That is how this thing is put in here. Design of a supervisory framework to support the application of risk-based approach. So again, it is for the public authorities that they have a proper supervisory framework so that the risk-based approach which is taken by the financial institution can be actually fit into that supervisory framework, and it can be regularly monitored, and accordingly it can be ensured that that is compliant with the overall structure of the country or overall structure of the public institutions, or you could say the country, I will say, at large. Identifying key stakeholders, then you should be knowing who are the key stakeholders, who would be dealing with you and who would be actually mitigating those challenges or those problems which would be there in the systems, and you should have a direct contact with them, so that if there is any risk come into your attention, those stakeholders can be taken to task, and they can be asked to, if in case there is something wrong, then they can actually help them. Information exchange in the public and private sector, and how the information is exchanged, that should be very clear in this 5-level principle that we are talking about here. And if we look at this thing, this is something that we have done in the previous slides also, identifying the criteria to assess the potential money laundering risk. That is country, geographic risk, customer risk, product service risk. Assign weights to each criteria. Then you need to assign proper weight to the criteria that is given above in point 1. So you would be rating them how riskier A, how riskier B is, and how riskier C is. This is the customer that you're dealing with. Identify variables that can impact risk. Then you need to be identifying variables. So if there is something happening with a customer as a So variables we would be saying with the customer's activity only. So what kind of activity which the customer does, maybe the two customers same business profile or with the same profile, they would be having something in common, they would be having something different in their overall profile. So you need to be assessing those variables and accordingly be rating them and putting a risk profile for them, so that accordingly you can monitor the transactions and categorize low, high, medium risk customer to them. And then the last one, identify appropriate measures to mitigate potential risk of those customers that are determined to be higher risk. So again, this is something which is always a task for the bank or the financial institution. They need to be very vigilant. They need to be very sure about the controls they have in place to ensure the activities done by the higher risk customers are actually scrutinized at every level, so that there is no chance of taking any risk, and everything is secured and protected in the beginning itself, and there is proper justification and rationale to answer why those activities are being done by the customer. So that is how this thing is there. So more controls for the higher risk customer, in short, more controls for the higher risk customer, so that everything is captured and is taken care. Okay, so these are the very simple point mentioned here. When you talk about the risk-based approach, right? What should form the part of financial institutions' control framework around money laundering? So this is the first thing that we have talked in detail as of now. Customer due diligence, know your customer. Then monitoring customer transaction, it is something an ongoing thing. Then the independent review. When you say the independent review, it can be the internal independent review. It can be an external independent review. So external means the regulatory review. Internal means the internal auditors who are actually doing the review of the compliance thing. So how the process in the bank is done comes under the independent review. Then the training and awareness is something which is very essential for the people involved in the KYC process, because they should be having enough training, enough awareness about the laws and regulation of the country where they are operating from, so that there is no glitches, there is no problem at all as far as the KYC AML goes. So all these 4 points, we would be divulging more into these 4 points in the other slides going forward. Okay, so to sum up, you could say the policy, monitoring, and operation. This is this is a pyramid, and how the whole KYC thing and whole compliance is done at the bank level for the for avoiding or preventing any misuse of funds or any illicit use of the money which is being there in the customer's account. So when the money is being used or sent from one account to the other account, there should be enough review. So the first is the policy. Formal AML KYC policy is made at the policy level. So policies define what all things the policy should be having, what all parameters it has, all will go into the policy thing. So everything would be into the policy, and the appointment of the AML compliance office would also be falling into the policy. Policy is something which is at the top. At the top, you can see the policy is designed by the top officials. So they take inputs from the sub teams or the teams who are responsible for KYC and the AML, and they design in such a way that it covers broadly every aspect of AML and KYC in the policy, including the appointment of compliance office and the officers, how the grievance will be taken care of, if there is some kind of a grievances disputes within the team, how those will be taken care of. Everything is devised and discussed and designed in the policy thing only. Then the monitoring. So monitoring is the periodic assessment you would be doing about the things which are in place. So you would be reviewing them on a periodic basis. Independent testing and review. Independent testing would be done. So you would be looking at a system basis also. You would be checking how systems are able to capture all those exceptions. If some exception goes, maybe I send, just take an example. If I make a payment mentioning some keywords, mention maybe when I institution is based out of a location. So when I mention the agent bank location, I mention Cuba. Maybe Cuba is the country name, right? So if I mention the country name in the SWIFT code, the SWIFT message, which is basically symbol of transmitting fund from one account to another account. This SWIFT message is used to transfer fund from one financial institution to the other financial institution. So while you're releasing the SWIFT, it goes to another financial institution. You can say maybe at the central bank level. The central bank would be monitoring such transactions before they actually release such transactions. So if they monitor and see there is a word Cuba coming in the SWIFT code, so those transactions would not be clear. So before actually it is being done by the central bank, it has to be done by the internal bank or the financial institution who is initiating this transaction, who is actually carrying out a transaction in the beginning. They have to ensure that this transaction go through doesn't go through. Why? Because it has a variable, it has a risk already in the SWIFT code. So these are the pointers which need to be tested periodically. So these are the basically actionable item for the bank. Like when they do the testing, they need to just make a test case, and they need to put in certain criteria for the transaction and see like how the transaction goes about. If that transaction actually misses all the if that misses the catches which your process should be having, the monitoring system should be so strong that it can capture these exceptions. If such transaction moves ahead without any notice by the internal team, then it becomes a risk for the whole system. Then at the end, maybe when it goes to the central bank level, central bank would be raising it to the financial institution, and becomes a problem for the financial institution. So that is how the independent testing, when you look at this word independent testing, it has become highly important for the financial institution. They should be having a periodic assessment. That's the one thing. And they also need to be doing the independent testing for the application system that they are doing, which can give them assurance the systems are actually performing as per the expectation, and there is no glitches, there is no tech issues in terms of the transactions which are being done using those systems. Monitoring escalation procedure systems. So if there is something which is actually uh, needs an attention of the higher management, those need to be escalated. They need to be brought to the attention of the higher management, so that more controls or more strong policies and procedures can be designed against those risks and those issues. The operation is documented KYC, CDD procedure, transaction monitoring, staff training and awareness that we have done in the previous slide also. So this is how the whole KYC or the AML thing is being performed. So if you can divide into the three parameters at large, probably it covers most of the stuff that we are doing at the KYC level. Okay. Any question as of now, guys? All right. So we can move on to next slide with this. Among the banking scandals discussed earlier, which do you think triggered the need for the KYC norms? Are KYC requirement only restricted to the banking or financial services industry? What should constitute a comprehensive KYC process? So, comprehensive KYC process, when you talk about the same thing that we are doing right now, that is a comprehensive process of the KYC. And it will also be talked in the later slides, the course 4 pointers which are important for the KYC. We will be talking in the next slides. And only, okay. So the next thing, are KYC requirements only restricted to the banking and financial service industry? What do you think about it? Anyone? Anyone, whatever your thoughts, maybe whatever comes to your mind. Are KYC requirement only restricted to the banking and financial services industry? The second, this point.
I don't think so. The KYC is so you need to get a SIM card or a network, something like something. You also need to get your documents verified, and it to that you need the card to.
Yeah, yeah. So we
But
can't say this is the, yeah, right. So we can't say just this is limited to banking and financial services. The scope of KYC is very broad, and it is just not restricted to the banking financial services. Rather, it is very large. Even when you talk about onboarding your client, maybe not just in the KYC business, but in other business also, it goes even there as well. So when you talk about setting up your client for any other purposes, also you need to do a verification for them, like what your client does, what are their source of income and everything. So it is just not restricted to the banking financial institution. It goes for every industry, I can say, in large. At large, it is applicable for every industry. That is a different story for financial institution banking. It is a more restrictions, more more strict monitoring and more strict vigilance is required when you look at for banking financial institution, but KYC is required for other industries as well. Okay. The need for KYC. So here the need for KYC is written. The objective is to prevent banks from being misused by criminal element for money laundering activities. KYC enable banks to know, understand their customer and the financial dealings better. Basel Committee states the need to implement effective know your customer standard as an essential part of risk management practice. Inadequate KYC risk management program may lead to significant risks, especially legal and reputational ones. So it is also very self-explanatory. There is uh, no need to further explain these terms. It is very clearly mentioned there. So first is the money laundering thing. To prevent the money laundering activity, the KYC is of utmost importance. Goes without saying. Then to know how your customer is dealing, how the customer is transacting with the other customer across the globe, overseas. So with KYC, you would be able to ascertain this, and you would actually be sure if customer is really has that level of funds to do those kind of transactions which the customer is doing. If it is that a legitimate transaction or illegitimate transaction, it can uh, easily be assessed by looking at the profile of the customer. So that can be done only when you have gone through the KYC process. You have assessed the profile of the customer. You have knowledge what kind of customer you're dealing with. So you can definitely be able to know the kind of a transaction the customer is doing is good or not, right? So Basel Committee states the need to implement effective know your customer. So that is another thing. So Basel Committee, I guess we have not done the Basel laws now as of now. So Basel thing would be done in the next chapter. That is the risk when we would be doing the regulatory framework and the risk management. There we would be reading about the Basel committees and the three kind of Basel laws that we have. The inadequate KYC risk management program may lead to significant risk, especially legal and reputational ones. Banks should have adequate policy, practice, and procedure in place that promote the high ethical and professional standards. Okay, so these are the four elements of KYC standards which need to be very strong in every financial institution to assess the strongness, to assess the robustness of KYC program at the bank level. One is the customer identification. So when you talk about the customer identification, it is more or less the KYC thing that we're talking about. So you need to identify the profile of the customer that you are onboarding. So you have a fair idea about the customer, non-customer, and you should be taking all the documentation from customer while the customer is onboarded. Then the customer acceptance policy. So while you are onboarding customer, you are supplying some documentation to the customer. Customer should be agreeing to those documentation. That documentation primarily talks about when account can be closed, when account would be banned for the customer, when it can be suspended. All those things are actually go into the customer acceptance policy. So it is clearly mentioned in those. So you can say it is kind of a terms and agreement. Like a terms and agreement, when you open an account, the terms and agreement are given to every customer. So it has the customer acceptance policy, customer accepting. Like these are the things which are embedded with the account which is being opened with the bank. So if something is not adhered, then things might not be might not be given to the customer. So customer's account can be suspended, it can be banned, it can be dormant, it can be deactivated. All these things can be put in place if customer is not aware about the customer acceptance policy and customer doesn't go. However, it is very common when we open the account, we do not go through all those terms and conditions, but we need to have a fair idea, and we can actually distinguish even even if we do not read through all the policies. If we just go through those terms and statements given at the high level, we can really make out, we'll be able to make out like what those terms and conditions actually talking about. So that is about the customer acceptance policy. Ongoing monitoring of high risk accounts that we have discussed in the previous slide also. It's the same thing here. So you should be monitoring the customer's transactions on the ongoing basis, and accordingly you should keep doing that, so that if there is something unusual done by the customer, that can come to your notice, and it can then accordingly put it to suspicious activity report, and which can be highlighted to the regulator. So there is a suspicious activity report which is made at the bank level, and those reports are presented to the regulator. So that suspicious activity report is actually talking about the suspicious transaction that you find in the customer transactions, and you monitor such transactions, and you actually uh, show those transactions to the regulators, and then regulators can actually do more of investigation around those transactions. So that is how that suspicious activity report is prepared, and that is the objective of the report, which is filed before the regulator. Then the risk management is basically about creating more control. So when you see when you do your independent review of the system, when you do the compliance review, you actually get to know about the risk management, and accordingly you have a more bigger controls around the system that you use. Moving on to the next slide, KYC to a core feature of bank's risk management control procedure, where a bank should establish the identity of the customer, monitor their account activity, determine those transactions that do not conform with the normal or expected transactions. So this is basically the two things that we have read here: identify the customer, monitor the account activity. If there is something which is not in agreement with the normal transaction, then you need to be highlighting. You are not supposed to highlight anything to the customer. One thing should be very clear: when there is something unusual happening, it does not mean that you should be highlighting that unusual to the customer. No, not at all. You're not supposed to do that with your customer, because if you start doing that, probably there are chances customer will get to know the bank is aware about the activity and the transaction he or she is doing, and that way customer can escape from the system, escape from the legal system, escape from the framework which the country has, as in the legal framework which the country has. So you, as a bank official, is not supposed to disclose any of the such transactions to the customer. Rather, you need to monitor them at your level and need to report to the regulator with the help of suspicious activity report that is filed to the regulators. You need to capture it there, and also you can bring it to the attention of the management in the bank, so that they can also have a very fair view and fair idea about the transaction being done by the customer. So hope this is clear. Okay. Moving on to slide 55. Okay, essential elements of KYC standards continue. Sound KYC policies and procedures contribute to banks' overall safety and soundness and protect the integrity of banking system. They reduce the likelihood of becoming vehicle for money laundering, terrorist financing, and other unlawful activities. So this is very clear, like why we're doing. It is again reiterated here why we are doing KYC thing. So the reasons are very clear. One is the soundness and safety of the bank itself, protect the integrity of banking system, and at the same time it is to ensure the banking system is not misused for the money laundering activities, not for any terrorist financing and any unlawful activity. That is another reason. Initiative to reinforce actions against terrorism have underlined the importance of banks' ability to monitor the customers wherever they conduct business. Okay. So this is the same thing that we have discussed on the other slide also. So we will be having more discussion on these terms on the other slides also. Okay, so now look at from the perspective of the onboarding. When you are onboarding, so the client, how you go about onboarding the client. So if you look at this slide, you can see from the customer point of view, front office receives the information required for the KYC collected from the customer and forwarded to the KYC and the compliance team. So what the front office does, they receive the customer information. So like a PAN card information in India and the Aadhaar card information, photograph and all other information you receive from the customer. Similarly, in overseas also they have their own identification process of identifying the customers who are dealing with them. So they receive the KYC document from the customer and the front office sends those documentation to the KYC department and the compliance team. So the KYC and compliance team does their review, that is customer identification program or the procedure is carried out by them, and then accordingly they assess the risk of the customer, the kind of the profile. The profile assessment is done by the CDD team. So customer due diligence is done here. Risk assessment is carried out, and accordingly a rating is assigned to the customer. So it can be low, medium, high risk, and if it is a high risk customer, then it goes into the EDD. EDD stands for enhanced due diligence, right? So CDD is a customer due diligence which is applicable to all the customers, no matter which kind of a customer is that. So CDD is applicable to that customer. However, enhanced due diligence is required for the high risk customers. If there is some high risk customer, then there should be a more greater level of due diligence formed by the bank official. That is how the things are done at the onboarding thing, at the onboarding of the customer. Any question guys on this slide? Anything that you not clear maybe? Okay. Okay, so we can take a quick breather, maybe a 5-minute breather, then we can resume again. All right, everyone?
Okay, sir.
Okay. Okay. So 5-minute breather, then we'll start because we will have only half an hour more. What is the time right now?
3:45.
3:45. Okay. So 3:50 we will resume again. Okay. 3:50. Okay. I guess Neha is not there, right? Neha has come? All right.
Yes, sir. I'm here.
Okay, fine, fair enough. I guess we have got a news. It has just come few minutes back. This lockdown has been extended till 30th April, right? The countrywide lockdown, which was up till 14th April, has been further extended until 30th, 30th April. So bad news for all of us because we were already confined for so many days, and we were expecting maybe it was to end on 14th April, but unfortunately it is not going to end soon. It will continue. It is just going to continue for another 15 days. So in a sense, we'll have to continue the way we are doing. It would be more of online things only. And I mean, how you guys are doing? As in, are you feeling okay at home, or it is becoming too much for you, or how you guys are actually managing things? How managing things? When I say actually, how you spending your time? Is it okay, or it is becoming too much for you? It is becoming difficult to handle now.
Actually, so I'm doing good. I was just watching Netflix, keep reading about stuff. But
Anyone?
seriously, I want to go on a vacation as soon as this things gets over.
Yeah. Because at times it becomes really too much because for 20 days and then further to 15 more days. You can't help it. The situation is grim, so some measures have to be taken at the country level, and it is something which has been taken collectively by all these CMs together. So you can't help it, and we'll have to go by the uh, go by the with all these decisions. We can't do nothing we can do actually about these things. But it is for the larger good. Hope so. If the lockdown continues, probably the cases that we are seeing at this moment maybe may subside, may go down, or there could be some more controls around it, more more arrangement in terms of how we can monitor the whole situation, how actually we can curb the spread of coronavirus and all. So overall, I think it should be okay.
But hello, you getting over?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
actually, I was
Yes.
thinking, it is good for the earth. We should get a lockdown like each year. The
Yeah.
pollution levels are down, the animals are getting back. Like, we are not the only living creatures who share this earth. We have exploited everything, and now everything is getting back to normal. So animals are back on the roads. So it is kind of good to see that nature is healing at least. And
Yeah, in fact,
somehow we have learned to enjoy the little things that we were forgetting about, and we were just in a race to just go. Everyone is living a normal life now. So I feel it is a bit, we are back on the track a little more towards humanity
yes, yes,
somehow.
absolutely. Absolutely. It is indeed back to humanity, as you said. Like, I was thinking of this particular situation yesterday only, and now there are more reasons you can compel your companies to make you work from home. There was a situation when companies were not allowing their employees to work from home, but now after this whole coronavirus things and the situation getting to such an extent where people are confined to their homes, they're not allowed to go outside at all. So now this is a new dimension to the whole thing, which is the whole new thing which has come up. So companies maybe going forward they start promoting more of work from home, and that way somebody who is not happy to stay in Delhi, maybe for that matter, want to stay in some some other place, can also manage to do that. So that way it is going to be overall good. So let's see like how things may turn out in the future. But everything happens for some good and some bad. Right now we all are criticizing, and we all know it is really sad across the globe, gloomy. People are dying. So many people have already lost their lives, and we are trying to contain it so that lives can be saved. But in a sense, we need to look at other things also, the other creatures also who are also living with us, and their life is as important as our. And that is possible only when we restrict our movement and we restrict other activities which lead to pollution, population, and all other things. So that way only the other creatures and the nature can also survive together with us. And hope with this thing, the if even half of the companies or maybe the 50% of the company working today in Gurgaon, if they decide to promote more of to work from home, even when the crisis is over, when this coronavirus thing is over, it would be good for the people or for the employees, for the nature, for the creatures, for the animals, for everyone. So that is the only good which I can get out of this thing as of now. Okay. All right. Okay, so let us move to. So this is the onboarding thing that we have done now, and now move to the KYC compliance thing. So maintenance of relationship with structured and comprehensive CDD process helps predict expected behavior and flag unexpected behavior. Right. So what the KYC compliance team is doing, they are looking at customer profile and basis the transactions and the activities of customer. They are categorizing the customer behavior, so they can assess if the customer behavior is unexpected one, and if it is in line with the laid out procedures and policies. So here you can read the statement written here: unexpected behavior by the customer will require increased scrutiny, right? SAR filing. What is SAR? That we discussed just in the previous slides when I was talking about the suspicious behavior activity. So suspicious activity report is called SAR, right? Suspicious activity report is called SAR filing, and it is done by the financial institution before the regulators and other law authorities. So it actually gives the data of transaction which the customers have performed using their platform, and that reflects any of the suspicious activity which customer has in his or her account, and that goes for further investigation at the authority or the law authorities level. Update CDD. If the behavior is legitimate, CDD needs to be updated. So if there is something which is which might be in the beginning appear to be suspicious, but after proper due diligence and confirmation, it turns out to be in line with the process, procedures and process of the bank, then it would be updated in the CDD, and customer would be given a green light. Okay, right? It's clear. There is one caller one. Who is caller one? Caller one. Now it is disappeared, right? Right, right, okay. Fair enough. Okay, so let us move on. Are any checks required when offboarding a customer? What do you think about this? Are any checks required when offboarding a customer? Any view, any thought you have? Should we do any offboarding checks when customer is being offboarding from your financial system that was being used by the customer earlier? No idea? Okay. Ideally, there shouldn't be many checks. However, if there were activities which were related to the previous transaction, those transactions need to be monitored before customer is offboarded from the bank. So, if there is some transaction which happened earlier and those transactions have not been cleared and cleared before the customer is being offboarded, so during the offboarding process, it needs to be ensured that all the transactions of the customers and every checks which needs to be performed on the banks, the earlier checks, previous checks have been performed. If those checks have been performed, then probably there is not that greater deal of scrutiny required when the customer is being offboarded from the bank. Okay, let us move on to slide. Key process customer acceptance lays down the policy of who to accept as a customer, links to the customer identification. So the customer acceptance is something which is linked to customer identification process as we discussed. So it basically talks about who the customer is. The customer needs to accept the lays down policy of who to accept as a customer, right? So this is the customer needs to accept. Customer identification procedure. Bank should establish a systematic procedure for identifying new customers and should not establish relationship until identity of new customer is satisfactorily verified. So if the customer is reluctant to give you enough information, if customer is not sharing requisite information with the bank, then there is no point opening the account for the customer. That is a very categorically mentioned in the KYC procedures and policies. Is there is if the verification of the customer is not done thoroughly, then you are not supposed to open an account, active account for the customer. There could be an inactive account. That means you have initiated the process of opening of the account. However, the active account is one wherein the customer is allowed to do the transactions. So active account would not come into picture as long as customer gives all the necessary documentation and the verification is completed. So up till then, active account would not be available for the customer. So customer identification procedure should identify the beneficiary of transaction conducted by the professional intermediaries. The person or an entity that maintains an account with the bank or those on behalf of an account is maintained, that is beneficial owners. So beneficial owner, there is a term that is used, beneficial owner, when you are dealing with your customers. So there is a possibility wherein there is more than two beneficial owners using the same account, right? Or maybe not the same account. There are two different accounts in the name of the same company. So if there is an entity, there might be two different owners, or there could be multiple owners, not only two, there could be multiple owners using the current account opened in the name of the account. And so those ownerships which we have are termed as beneficial owners. So they are the beneficial owner of the account which is running in the name of the company. Any person or entity connected with the financial transaction who can pose a significant reputation or other risk to the bank. Okay, so let us move to another slide. So this is how the customer identification process is carried out. So first is notifying the customer, then you gather information, then you verify that information, then you conduct this sanction screening, then you maintain the record. So these are the steps involved in doing the identification. When you look at the KYC process and when you actually look at the customer identification process, which is part of the KYC itself, so you actually go through these steps while you complete the customer identification. So customer identification is you are sure you are okay with the information and the level of information shared by the customer, that is authenticated by the official bank officials, and they are uh, quite satisfied with the level of information and the documentation given by the customer. So if you just look at the first word, that is notify customer, it is provide adequate notice to new customers on information required to verify their identifiers, such as notification must be given before the account is open. Then the minimum requirement of CIP information to be collected from the individual and non-individual customers to gather information, right? Then what is verify information? Firm need not establish accuracy of every element of information obtained from the customer, but must verify enough information to form a reasonable belief that it knows the true identity of the customer. So if you look at this particular point, that is verify information, it is of utmost importance. Why it is of utmost importance? Because it is just not being complacent with the documentation shared by the customer. It is more than that. What is this? You need to actually authenticate, you need to validate the documentation supplied by the customer, and you need to get it signed off by the authorities. The information given by the customer is in line with the process. So there could be a possibility the documentation supplied is not registered anywhere with the government authorities. So it is a fake information supplied to you. And if you just rely the information is true, and it can't be incorrect, then there is a high degree of possibility that you tend to open an account in the name of the customer, but later on it is realized that account which was open in the beginning was opened on the false documentation, and now already the customer has done quite a transactions using the account, which is a problem for the bank later on uh, in justifying or giving the rationale why and how the account was opened in the first place. Then conduct the sanction screening. Then the sanction screening is we talked about the OFAC entry. So you need to verify like the account which is being opened is not for the customer who has anything related with the OFAC. OFAC is the country which are banned by European Union and also the United States, UN you can say. So there's certain countries and institutions who are banned by the OFAC and other sanction lists and databases. Therefore, you need to do the conduct sanction screening and maintain those reports at last. So this is the customer identification, right? Then customer identification involves documentary and non-documentary. Documentary comparing information provided to the customer against the official government issued, state issued, or reputable agency issued documentation, registration and licenses, right? Involves validating the customer's identity using the third parties or other document reports. So this is the verification information. How you would be verifying? You would be mostly it is done with the documentary. So documentary primarily talks about you verify the information of the customer basis the information available in the government reports. So when you compare it or when you look at from the India perspective, the Aadhaar information is one of the robust information. So that gives a very strong clarity on the verification. The customer who is transacting or doing business with you has indeed the same customer which has given you the document in the beginning. So that is how the government issued papers are the best way of doing the verification. Then other is the non-documentary, that involves when you verify the customer identity using third parties or other non-document reports, which are not the one that we just talked in the documentary. So basis of maybe the other bank information and the information available with the statement of the other bank, when you try to use those information for the verification, that will be featured into non-documentary part. Okay, and moving on to the next slide. And you look at this here, it is more or less the same information that we talked about in the previous slide. It is just an extension of what we have reviewed in the previous slide. This document for the verifying the identifier of the customer are those most difficult to obtain illicitly and to counterfeit. So again, when you say most difficult to obtain and counterfeit, that means the document which are issued by the government and which are Aadhaar card. So these are the most and I will say the document which are somewhere centralized. So those are the document can be relied upon for verification. So there you will have more confidence. You know that those documents would not be misused or may not be counterfeit in a sense. So that is how you would say you would mostly rely on the document which are issued by the government. Special attention should be exercised in case of non-resident customers. The bank know why customer has chosen to open an account in foreign jurisdiction. Bank should have an idea like why a customer who is not from the same country wants to open the account in particular country. There should be a rationale. Similarly, if a customer wants to open an account in Delhi and he actually belongs to some other region, there should be a justification why customer wants to open an account there. If there is a valid justification, probably he is working there, he is doing job there, then there is a legitimate reason of getting that account open, right? Extent and nature of the information depends on type of applicant, person, corporate sector. Then the kind of so the type of account being opened is something which is also needs to be verified. This is the profile of the customer. After opening account, the problem of verification arises which cannot be resolved, then the bank should close out the account. So this is again the same thing that we discussed in the previous slide also. If there is some issue with the verification, then the account cannot be open. It should be closed. Any question as of now? Anything? Okay. So the next slide is basically talking about the identification process. There are some customers who are high profile customers and who have maybe even termed as celebrity customers who want to have their account open not in their name but with some number. So those accounts are from numbered account. You can look at this slide and it is written the confidential numbered account should not function as anonymous account, but they should be subject to exactly the same KYC procedures as all other customer accounts, even if the test is carried out by selected staff. A number account can offer additional protection for the identity of the account holder. The identity must be known to the sufficient number of staff to operate proper due diligence. So this is have you heard about this earlier? Have you ever heard about numbered account? Anyone? Okay, so you have not heard about it. So I can see your responses there on chat. I just said no. Nia said no. Okay, so this is one of the account service which is given to some of the high profile customers. It is not applicable to every other customer, not for the common customer for sure. It is only offered to customers who are a high profile customer. They tend to get this kind of service wherein they are not their name is not reflected in the system. It doesn't mean it is not reflected anywhere. No, it is not like that. Their documentation would be there with the bank, and they can be traced and they can be identified. But as such, in the application, their name would not be appear. So that while a bank official access the account of the customer, they would not be having any idea about the customer, who that customer is all about. Right? They would not be knowing about that customer. They would just be identifying the number. They can for sure be able to see the transactions and every other stuff in the account. Every other information would be visible other than the name and the address of the customer. Name and address would not be visible because the customer is considered to be a confidential customer, high-profile customer who needs a cover, who needs some level of the security, and therefore numbered account is open for them, but that number is linked somewhere. And while those accounts are open, these accounts are open after the KYCs. So KYC involves knowing your customer thoroughly, customer identification, customer account, customer acceptance policy, then monitoring, then risk management, everything which comes under the KYC that actually is gets completed. Only then the customer account is open. So number is just to prevent, numbered account you can say in short is just to prevent the identity of the customer. But that doesn't mean at all the customers KYC, or there should be a range of staff at the bank level who should have a knowledge of such customers, so that they can regularly update their database, and they can do the proper KYC norms as and when the need arises, or as and when the situation demands. They can do the KYC of those customers as well. So there should be a range of staff, or a selected list of staff who should have access to such customers as well. So that is what is given here. Okay. Moving on to the next slide. If you look at this line, it is written here: in such accounts should in no circumstance be used to hide the customer identity from a bank's compliance function or from the supervisors. Right. So this is an important thing. Such accounts should not be misused. That you open such account maybe in the name of some customers who are unnecessarily given cover to hide the identity of those customers. However, in reality, they do not need any cover. They do not need any identity cover, right? A bank should follow the same customer identification procedure even if the account of a customer is transferred from the another bank which has a robust KYC program as well. What do you understand by this? Anything that comes to your mind by looking at this particular slide? This statement which is given here. What do you make of? What do you make of this statement? And then you can also take into account the another statement which is given at the bottom. If any bank has any reason to believe that an applicant is being refused banking facility by another bank, it should apply enhanced due diligence process to the customer. So maybe combined together, these two statements are separate, but you can just what do you understand by them? If you have anything as per your understanding. Anything that comes to your mind?
No, so it can be like when an account is transferred, then a bank can assume that all the due diligence have been already done, but it shouldn't be the process. Like you should have do all the KYC procedure and comply all the norms again, even if the account is getting transferred and all the due diligence have done before. Still, you have to do that again.
Right, absolutely. Like it usually happens. Maybe the account was open at one particular domain or division of the bank as a home loan or as a credit card, right? Now the customer is willing to open another account which might be a credit card account, maybe another savings account or checking account, right? So that time it should not be assumed because the customer has already gone through the KYC process, therefore no need of doing further KYC and you can completely blindly rely on the KYC done before. It shouldn't be like this. You really need to assess the KYC further and maybe doing the KYC again as well. And here, even if you look at this particular statement which is given, this talks more about customer being transferred from another bank. So that means maybe another bank that can be it can be within the same bank, also the same maybe one branch to another branch, or it can be completely new bank also. That means he is leaving one bank and joining another bank. So that way you need to do the KYC completely. You need to complete the KYC for sure, with goes without saying. But even if the customer is just moving from one department, just having a business at one particular division of the bank, will be home loan, and now customer is interested to open his savings account or the checking account at the consumer banking division of the bank, then the consumer banking division of the bank also needs to do the KYC norms which are required for knowing the customer. So as we discussed, KYC is just not restricted to the investment banking. It is something, it is a phenomena which is done by all the divisions of the bank. No matter which division you talk about, home loan, consumer banking, every division of the bank does the KYC of the customer to have a better information about the customer, what customer does, and so that they can be protected and safeguarded in future with the transactions and the activity which customer does. So that is the reason the KYC is done. So that's right, as you said, this is something which customer bank has to do, no matter if it has been done in the past or if it is done or not done. Okay. Let us move on to the next slide. And with that, we will end. Okay. So maybe this will be the last slide. So we will be doing it today, and then we will be winding it up and we'll be taking it up further. We'll just start from here only because this is the another as in when you talk about the KYC involve four things. The four things four things broadly. One is a customer identification program or procedure, you can say. Then there is the customer acceptance policy. Then you have customer monitoring. Then the risk management. So these are the four things in which you can divide the KYC. So this one that we are doing right now is the second category of the KYC. The first we have already covered is the customer identification procedure. That is up till here was the customer identification procedure. And this one, the customer acceptance policy. So you can say the KYC, when you look at KYC, I can divide KYC into four broad terms. One is customer identification program or procedure, you can say. Next is customer acceptance policy, which is right now we are looking at this slide. And the third is your customer monitoring. So this is the ongoing process. So you continue monitoring the transaction of the customer. That is again part of the KYC. And the last is the risk management. So when you actually do the monitoring of transactions of the various customers, you might come out with this thing like this. This control which we have at this moment is not enough to cater all the things which customer is doing, and the finer nuances or finer things might miss out with the controls and the various checks and balances that you have. So you may propose more controls. So that is the ongoing thing which you need to continue, and you need to keep devising, keep enhancing, keep making it bigger and bigger with every passing day. So that goes into customer monitoring that we will be doing the next after this. So what this actually talks about, the customer acceptance policy is something that we discussed in the previous slide also briefly. It is about making customer know about the policy and procedure at bank and getting them accepted by the customer. Customer needs to be he should be well versed with the policies and the terms at the bank level, and after reading through, after understanding them well, the customer should be accepting them. Even if customer doesn't go through them and accept them and sign them off, that means customer has given a consent. The customer would be in adherence with the laid down policy and procedure of the bank. So if in case in future customer does something which is not in compliance with the bank's policy and all, then the customer's account can be barred, customer's account can be deactivated, it can be suspended, it can be closed as well. So this is what the customer acceptance policy broadly talks about. The factors considered in CAP are customer's background, country of origin, public high profile position, linked accounts, business activities, other risk indicator. So all these things are considered, and according to these things, this customer acceptance policy may vary from customer to person. So a customer who is who's a common customer may have a different may have a slightly different customer acceptance policy. A customer who's a high profile customer might have a different customer acceptance policy. Maybe wider checks or wider controls can be there at such profiles. So these are the things that we would be covering in the customer acceptance policy. So some of them we would be doing tomorrow. With this, I stop it here. Maybe any question, anything that you have right at this moment, you can just confirm, and then we can just end it for today. And tomorrow, at the same time, 2:30, we will be starting. Anything, guys? It is good to go. Okay, all right. So. Okay, guys. So I am okay. Okay. Bye. Okay, just bye. Bye. Okay, guys. So everyone, we will be connecting again tomorrow at the same time, 2:30. Till then, bye. Take care. Bye. See you again.